In a bustling diner, a waitress's kindness to a struggling veteran sparks a firestorm, leading to her shocking dismissal until unexpected allies arrive, silencing the room with their powerful presence. Welcome to Life Bond Tales. Like and share the video if you feel this story is worth of it. Let's dive into the story. The Maplewood Eatery sat like a warm beacon on a quiet corner of Bend, Oregon, nestled between a dusty bookstore with creaky shelves and a hardware store that smelled of sawdust and paint. Every morning at 7, the diner came alive with the clatter of plates, the hiss of the coffee machine, and the low hum of locals swapping stories over stacks of pancakes and crispy bacon. Sarah Jenkins, 32, moved through the chaos with a practiced grace, her sneakers squeaking on the checkered floor, her brown hair tied back in a loose ponytail that always seemed one shift away from unraveling. She'd been at Maplewood for 5 years, pouring every tip into her younger brother's college fund, dreaming of the day he'd graduate without the weight of debt she'd carried since their parents passed. Her hazel eyes caught everything: the elderly couple who liked their eggs sunny side up, the trucker who always left an extra $5, the single mom who whispered thanks when Sarah slipped an extra muffin into her to-go bag. Today was no different. The breakfast rush hit like a tidal wave, orders piling up faster than the cooks could plate them, and the air thick with the scent of burnt toast and syrup. Sarah weaved between tables, balancing 3 plates on one arm while refilling a coffee mug with the other, her smile steady even when a customer grumbled about cold hash browns. Her co-worker Mia, a 19-year-old with nervous hands and a habit of chewing her lip, was drowning at the register, fumbling with change as the line grew restless. Sarah caught her eye and mouthed, "You're doing great," before turning to wipe a boy. Ketchup smear off a booth. The diner's manager, Victor Grayson, loomed behind the counter, his slicked-back hair and starched shirt giving him the look of a man who thought he was running a corporation, not a small-town eatery. His voice clipped and cold cut through the noise. "Sarah, table 9's still waiting on their juice. Don't make me tell you again." She nodded, not breaking stride, knowing his bark was part of the job, like the sore feet and coffee stains on her. Hypron? But then she saw him, an older man standing near the entrance, his thin frame swallowed by a threadbare jacket, his hands trembling as he clutched a worn canvas bag. His face was weathered eyes, cloudy with age, or maybe something heavier, and a faded navy patch on his sleeve caught the light. He didn't move toward a table, just stood there like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be inside. No one else noticed. The regulars were too busy with their newspapers and phones, Victor too focused on a smudge on the counter, but Sarah felt a tug in her chest. She set down her tray and walked over, her voice soft. "Sir, are you okay?" He blinked slowly, like her words had to travel a long way to reach him. "I was supposed to meet someone." I think his voice was rough, barely above a whisper. Sarah saw the way. His shoulders hunched the way his boots were scuffed, and one lace was missing, and something in her knew this man hadn't come for a meeting. He'd come for something else. Maybe warmth, maybe a moment to feel human. Sarah's heart tugged harder as she stood by the elderly man, his frail form still hovering near the Maplewood Eatery's entrance, like a shadow unsure of its place. His name, she'd learn later, was Henry Caldwell, but for now, he was just a stranger, with tired eyes and a navy patch that spoke of years heavier than his thin frame could carry. The diner's morning rush swirled around them, plates clinking, coffee cups steaming, and the hum of conversation rising like a tide. But Sarah saw only him, his fingers fidgeting with the strap of his canvas bag, his gaze drifting to the floor as if he didn't belong. She crouched slightly to meet his eyes, her voice gentle. "Do you want to sit down, maybe have something to eat?" Henry's lips parted, then closed like he was weighing the cost of admitting hunger. "I don't have much on me," he mumbled, eyes flicking. "To the side, I just thought maybe I could wait here." Sarah caught the way his hand trembled, not just from age but from something deeper. Maybe pride, maybe shame. She straightened up and smiled, the kind of smile that had calmed 100 fussy customers. "Let me get you a seat, it's no trouble." She guided him to a small booth by the window, where the morning light softened the worn edges of his jacket. He sat slowly, joints creaking like old wood, his bag sliding to the floor with a soft thud. Sarah didn't ask questions, didn't need to. The way his shoulders relaxed told her enough. She grabbed a menu but didn't hand it to him instead. She leaned in. What if I get you something warm? Eggs, bacon toast, maybe some coffee to start the day, right? Henry's eyes widened just a fraction, like he hadn't expected kindness to come so easily. That sounds good, he said, voice cracking, but I can't pay for all that. Sarah waved it off. Don't worry about it, I've got you. She walked back to the counter, her mind already set, ignoring the voice in her head that reminded her of Victor's no freebies rule posted in bold letters in the break room. She slipped behind the register, where Mia was still fumbling with a stack of receipts, and whispered to the cook, Javier, a burly man with a soft spot for strays, I need a breakfast. Plate eggs, scrambled bacon, crispy toast, buttered extra coffee. Javier raised an eyebrow, his spatula pausing over the griddle U ringing. It up. Sarah nodded, pulling $15 from her apron pocket, her tips from the morning's first hour, and slid it into the register. Javier grunted, but his eyes softened. He'd seen her do this once before for a kid whose mum couldn't afford dessert on his birthday. Back at the booth, Sarah set down a steaming mug of coffee, first watching, as Henry wrapped his hands around it like it was more than just a drink. When the plate arrived, piled high with food, the smell of bacon and butter filling the air, Henry stared at it for a long moment, his eyes glassy. You didn't have to do this, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Sarah crouched again so they were level. I wanted to. You look like you've earned a good meal. He gave a small nod, and for the first time, a faint smile broke through like a crack in a long sealed wall. As he picked up his fork, slow and deliberate, he said, I was in Vietnam 68 to 70, saw things I still don't talk about. Sarah sat across from him for just a moment, letting him speak, not pushing, just listening. He told her about a buddy who didn't make it home, about nights under jungle stars, about coming back to a country that didn't always welcome him. His voice was quiet but steady, like he was unearthing something buried deep. Sarah felt the weight of his words, the kind of weight that made the diner's noise fade into the background. She glanced around, saw Mia watching from the counter, her eyes wide, saw a couple at the next table glance over, then look away. Victor was still at the far end of the counter, scribbling on a clipboard, oblivious for now. Sarah stood. You eat up, okay? I'll check on you in a bit. Henry nodded, his fork shaking slightly as he cut into the eggs. Thank you, miss, you're a good one. She smiled and turned back to her other tables, her apron lighter, despite the missing cash. The act felt small in the grand scheme of things, just a plate of food, a few minutes of her time. But to Henry it was a lifeline, a reminder that someone saw him. Sarah moved through the rest of her tables, refilling waters, dodging a spilled juice incident, her mind half on Henry, wondering if he'd finish the meal, wondering if he'd be okay. She didn't know his story beyond those few words, but she didn't. Need to kindness didn't require a full history. As she cleared a table nearby, she caught him taking slow, careful bites, like he was savoring each one, his eyes occasionally drifting to the window, where the world outside moved on without him. For a moment, Sarah felt a quiet pride, not the loud kind, but the kind that settles in your bones when you know you've done something right. The Maplewood Eatery's morning buzz had settled into a steady rhythm, but the air shifted when Victor Grayson's sharp eyes caught Sarah slipping back to her tables after serving Henry his breakfast. Victor stood behind the counter, his clipboard, now abandoned, his arms crossed so tightly, his knuckles whitened. He'd seen the exchange, the plate of food, the coffee, the way Sarah lingered at the booth, and his jaw tightened with the kind of slow burn that meant trouble. Sarah felt his gaze as she refilled a customer's water pitcher, her stomach knotting but her face calm. She'd broken his cardinal rule, no free meals, no exceptions, and she knew he wouldn't let it slide. Victor didn't shout, he didn't need. To his authority came from precision, the way he could make you feel small with a single sentence. He stepped out from behind the counter, his polished shoes clicking on the floor, and called out, Sarah, a word, please. His voice loud enough to turn heads. The diner didn't stop all at once, but the clatter of forks slowed a family in booth 5 paused mid-conversation, and Mia at the register froze, her hands hovering over a stack of receipts. Sarah set down the pitcher and turned, keeping her shoulders square. I'm here, Victor. He didn't wait for her to reach him. He closed the distance, his eyes narrow. You care to explain why you're handing out food like we're a charity kitchen? Sarah kept her voice even. I paid for it myself, Victor, $15 from my tips, it's on the register. His lips curled, not quite a smile, more like a grimace. That's not the point. You don't get to make those calls. This is my diner. My rules. You don't just give away product because someone looks sad. Sarah's cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment but with a quiet anger. He's a veteran, Victor. He was hungry. I did what felt right. Victor's eyes flicked to Henry, who sat hunched over his half-eaten plate, unaware of the storm brewing. Right, Victor repeated the word, dripping with disdain. You think you're some kind of hero now, feeding strays while the rest of us have to keep this place running. The diner was quieter now. A trucker at the counter lowered his coffee mug, a woman, with a toddler stopped texting to listen. Sarah's hands tightened at her sides. I'm not trying to be a hero, I'm trying to be human. Victor stepped closer, his voice dropping to a cold, deliberate tone. You want to play saint, do it on your own dime. Not in my business. You're done. Sarah, turn in your apron and get out. The words hit like a slap. The room went still. No clinking. Plates, no murmured orders, just the faint hum of the coffee machine. Sarah stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. No warning, no discussion, just her job stripped away in front of strangers. Henry looked up, his fork, trembling, his eyes wide with confusion. Miss, he said, his voice hoarse, you didn't do anything wrong. Victor waved him off. Sir, this doesn't concern you. Enjoy your meal. But Henry didn't back down. He reached into his jacket, his fingers slow but deliberate, and pulled out a small silver pin. A silver star, its edges worn but gleaming under the diner's lights. I earned this in '69, he said quietly. Most of my squad didn't come back. She showed me kindness. You don't fire someone for that. Victor's face twitched, an eyebrow raised. Excuse me, this is a staff matter. Stay out of it. Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady. Now please, sir, it's okay. Finish your food. Henry's eyes met hers, cloudy but fierce. I didn't mean to cause this, he whispered. Sarah shook her head. You didn't, it's not on you. She untied her apron, folding it with care, like it still held some piece of her pride. Mia stood by the register, her eyes glassy, her hands twisting a dish rag. Javier poked his head out from the kitchen, his face tight, but he said nothing. The silence in the room was heavy. A few customers shifted uncomfortably. One coughed, another checked their phone, but no one spoke up. Victor scanned the crowd, his chin raised like he'd won something attention. Everyone, he said, his voice carrying, this is what happens when you break policy. If anyone else wants to hand out free meals, feel free to join Sarah on the way out. A nervous laugh came from a table near the door, but it died quickly. Sarah's heart pounded, not from fear but from the sting of being made a spectacle, her kindness twisted into a mistake. She looked at Henry one last time, his hands still clutching the pin, his eyes fixed on her, like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. It's all right, she said softly to him. It's really all right. She walked toward the door, her sneakers quieter now, the weight of every eye on her back. Outside, the morning air was crisp, the sidewalk damp from an earlier drizzle. She stood by the diner's window, her apron still in her hands, staring at the reflection of a woman she barely recognized. Inside, Victor strutted back to the counter, already barking at Mia to clear a table, his control restored, or so he thought. The customers returned to their meals, some slowly, some avoiding eye contact, but the mood had shifted. Something unspoken hung in the air. Sarah didn't cry, she just stood there, her breath fogging in the cool air, wondering why doing the right thing felt like a punishment. Sarah stood outside the Maplewood Eatery, her breath visible in the chilly Bend morning, her folded apron clutched, like a lifeline as the diner's door swung shut behind her. Inside, the clatter of plates resumed, but it felt hollow, like the room was holding its breath. Victor's voice barked orders at Mia, who moved sluggishly, her eyes still red from watching Sarah's exit. Henry sat in his booth, his silver star pin glinting faintly, his fork now still as he stared at his plate, his appetite gone. The customers ate in uneasy silence, some stealing glances at the empty spot where Sarah had stood moments before. But the air shifted again when the bell above the door chimed sharp and deliberate. 3 figures stepped inside their navy uniforms, crisp, but worn their boots heavy with purpose. The leader, Lieutenant Commander Elena Torres, had a presence that quieted the room without a word. her dark eyes scanning the diner with the calm authority of someone who'd seen worse than a petty manager. Behind her were two others, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Reed, his face lined with years of service, and Petty Officer Daniel Ortiz, younger, but with a steadiness that matched his companions. They weren't here for coffee. Elena's gaze landed on Henry's booth, and she nodded to him a silent acknowledgement before turning to the counter. "Who's in charge here?" she asked, her voice clear, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Victor straightened his shoulders, puffing up behind the counter. "I am Victor Grayson, manager. What's this about?" Eleanor stepped forward, her boots clicking. "You fired a woman for helping one of our own, a veteran who's earned more respect than you've shown today." Victor's smirk faltered. "This is a business, we have policies, she broke them. It's that simple." Marcus folded his arms, his voice low but firm. "Simple doesn't cover it. You humiliated someone for showing compassion to a man who served in Vietnam. That's not policy. That's a failure of character." The diner was dead quiet now, a couple near. The window set down their forks. A delivery driver named Carl, who came every morning for eggs, leaned forward in his seat. Daniel pointed to Henry's pin still resting on the table. "You see that it's not a trinket. It's a life paid for in blood. You don't get to dismiss that, or the woman who honored it." Victor opened his mouth, but the words caught as customers began to stir. A teacher named Ellen, who always sat by the jukebox, stood up. "I've known Sarah for years. She remembers my daughter's name. Knows I like decaf. She's the heart of this place." Carl nodded, his voice gruff. "She gave my kid a free orange juice once when I was short on cash, never made a fuss about it." Mia, still clutching her dish rag, found her voice. "She stayed late to help me clean. When I was new, didn't even ask. Full credit." Victor's eyes darted around his controls, slipping like sand through his fingers. "Look, this isn't a town hall. She made a choice. She paid the price." Elena's gaze didn't waver. "Choices like hers keep people like us going. You punished her for doing what you should have done yourself." Outside, Sarah watched through the window, her breath fogging the glass, unsure what was unfolding but feeling the weight of it. The uniforms, the way Henry sat up straighter, it was all connected to her somehow. She stepped closer, her sneakers crunching on the damp sidewalk, her heart racing. Back inside, Javier leaned out from the kitchen, his apron off, his voice steady. "Victor, you've been riding us for years. Sarah never did. She showed up early, stayed late, never complained. You fired the wrong one." The room felt like it was tipping, the customers' whispers growing bolder. A woman named Paula, who ran a bakery nearby, spoke up. "I saw what Sarah did. She didn't just feed him. She listened to him. That's more than I can say for most." Victor's face reddened. "You all think you can run my diner now? This is my place. I decide what goes." Elena took a single step closer, her voice calm but cutting. "Your place. But you're standing on the backs of people like Sarah, and you just threw her out. Like she was nothing." Henry finally spoke, his voice shaky but clear. "She saw me when no one else did. You don't fire someone for that, you thank them." The words hung in the air, simple but heavy. A man in a flannel shirt at the counter pulled out his phone and started typing, his thumbs moving fast. Another customer, a retiree named Doris, was already filming discreetly, her phone propped against her coffee mug. Victor noticed his jaw tightening. "You're all making this bigger than it is. She gave away food, end of story." Marcus shook his head. "It's not about the food. It's about respect. Something you clearly don't understand." The bell chimed again, as a fourth figure entered, not in uniform, but with the same steady gait. He was a local mechanic named Ray, who often fixed cars for veterans at a discount. "I heard what happened," he said, eyes on Victor. "Word travels fast when you do something this wrong." Sarah, still outside, caught Ray's arrival and felt a lump in her throat. She didn't know how this had spiraled, how her small act had pulled these people together. But she felt it, something bigger than her was taking shape. Inside, Elena turned to the room. "Anyone else have something to say?" The silence broke as more voices joined, a college student, a nurse, a bus driver, each sharing a piece of Sarah's quiet kindness, how she'd covered a shift for a sick co-worker, how she'd slipped an extra pancake to a hungry kid. Victor stood alone now, his authority unraveling with every word. He tried one last time. "This is my business. You don't get to judge me." Elena's eyes softened, but her words were firm. "We're not judging you. We're holding you accountable. There's a difference. The diner felt like a courtroom now, every glance, every whisper carrying weight. Sarah pressed her hand against the window, her apron still in her grip, wondering if she should go back in, wondering if this was her fight or theirs. The Maplewood Eatery's air was thick with tension, as the Navy veterans stood firm, their words still echoing in the now quiet diner. Sarah lingered outside, her breath fogging the window, her apron a crumpled weight in her hands, as she watched the scene unfold like a stranger in her own story. Inside, the confrontation had cracked something open, customers no longer just spectators, but witnesses to a wrong that demanded a response. Doris, the retiree with her phone propped against her coffee mug, had captured every moment, the veterans' steady voices, Henry's trembling defense, Victor's faltering defiance. By noon, the video was uploaded to a local Facebook group, a shaky 90-second clip titled, "Waitress Fired for Helping Veteran." It spread like wildfire, shared by a veterans organization, then picked up by a Bend community page, and within hours it was on Twitter with hashtags like "Justice for Sarah" and "Maplewood Shame." Comments flooded in that manager's a disgrace, she's a hero for what she did, boycott Maplewood until they make this right. Sarah didn't know about the video yet. She was still at the bus stop, her mind replaying Victor's cold words, her heart heavy with the silence of her co-workers as she'd walked out. Back inside, the diner felt emptier despite the crowd. Ellen. The teacher stood and placed a 20 on her table for Sarah. She said loudly for what she did for that man. Carl, the delivery driver, followed, dropping a 10. "I'm done eating here until she's back." One by one, others joined the quiet rebellion, leaving cash for Sarah's kindness, or walking out entirely, their half-eaten meals abandoned. Mia's hands shook as she cleared a table, her voice barely audible as she whispered to Javier, "I can't stay here after this." Javier nodded, his apron already off. "I'm with you, kid. I've worked too many kitchens to watch someone like Sarah get tossed out, like trash." He walked to the front, dropped his keys on the counter and said to Victor, "I'm out, you don't get it and you never will." Victor's face was pale now, his usual swagger replaced by a nervous twitch as he snapped, "You'll regret this, you're throwing away a steady job." Javier didn't look back, just walked out the door past Sarah, who startled at the sight of him. He paused. "You didn't deserve that. He said you're better than this place." Sarah managed a nod, "Thanks, Javier," but her voice was small, her confidence shaken. Mia followed minutes later, her apron in her hands, tears streaking her face. "I should have said something when he fired you. I was scared." Sarah hugged her. "It's okay, you're saying it now." The diner's tables were thinning out, regulars slipping away, some leaving notes scribbled on napkins. "Sarah was the reason we kept coming." By mid-afternoon, the video had hit 10,000 views. A local news outlet, Oregon Daily, picked it up with a headline, "Waitress Fired for Feeding Veteran Sparks Outrage." The story quoted the veteran's words and included a still of Henry's silver star glinting on the table. Social media erupted with strangers from across the state chiming in, "I'd hire her in a heartbeat. She's what this country needs more of. Shame on that manager." A veterans nonprofit in Portland shared the clip, adding, "We stand with Sarah Jenkins. Her kindness is what service is about." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her brother, a link to the video. "What did you do, sis? This is everywhere." She watched it in silence at the bus stop, her heart pounding as she saw herself walk out, then heard Elena's voice calling out Victor's cruelty. She didn't feel like a hero, just tired and exposed. But the town wasn't done. A man named Thomas Reed, a local business owner who ran a community center for veterans and families, saw the video and drove to Maplewood. He walked in just as Victor was trying to rally the remaining staff back to work. Thomas didn't bother with Victor. He went straight to the booth where Henry still sat, his coffee cold now, and asked about Sarah. Henry's eyes lit up. "She gave me more than a meal, she gave me respect." Thomas nodded, made a call and left. An hour later, Sarah's phone rang, an unknown number. She answered hesitant, and a warm voice said, "Miss Jenkins, I'm Thomas Reed. I run the Cascade Community Center. We help veterans and families get back on their feet. I saw what you did for Henry. We need someone like you, full-time, better pay, flexible hours. A place where kindness isn't a rule, it's the foundation." Sarah blinked, stunned. "Why me?" she asked. Thomas's voice softened. "Because you didn't hesitate. You saw someone who needed help, and you acted. That's who we want." She didn't say yes right away. Her mind was still spinning, but the offer felt like a lifeline, something real after the morning's chaos. Back at Maplewood, the boycott was taking hold. The evening crowd was non-existent. Only a few out-of-towners unaware of the drama sat at the counter. Victor paced, muttering about disloyalty, but the truth was in the empty chairs. The video hit $50,000. Views by dusk, a petition started online, demanding Victor apologize or step down. It had 2,000 signatures in hours. Sarah sat on her couch that night, her small apartment lit by a single lamp, the video playing again on her phone. She read the comments. "My dad was a vet. I'd give anything for someone to treat him like that. She's a blessing. This town doesn't deserve her." Her eyes stung, not from sadness, but from being seen in a way she'd never expected. She texted Thomas back, "I'd like to talk more about the job." The reply was instant: "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. we'd be honored." Sarah set her phone down, her apron still folded on the coffee table, and for the first time all day she felt a flicker of hope. Sarah woke the next morning to a world that felt both familiar and entirely new. Her small apartment still smelled of last night's microwave dinner, but the weight of yesterday's chaos lingered like a half-remembered dream. She dressed carefully, a simple blouse and jeans, her hands steady, despite the nerves fluttering in her chest, and caught the early bus to the Cascade Community Center. The center was a modest brick building on the edge of Bend, its windows lined with posters for veterans support groups and family workshops, the air inside warm with the scent of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls donated by a local bakery that had seen the viral video. Sarah stepped through the door, her sneakers quiet on the polished floor, and was greeted by Thomas Reed. His handshake firm, his smile genuine. "Welcome, Sarah. We're glad you're here." He led her to a small office where they talked about the job. Front desk duties, coordinating meal deliveries, helping veterans like Henry navigate housing, or medical forms, listening when they needed to share a story. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt solid, purposeful, like every task mattered. Sarah nodded. "I'd like to start as soon as you'll have me." Thomas's eyes crinkled. "You're hired. Orientation's Monday, but come by this afternoon if you want to meet some folks." Sarah left the center feeling lighter, her apron now tucked away in a drawer at home, no longer a symbol of loss, but a reminder of what she'd stood for. She stopped by a coffee shop to process the morning, her phone buzzing with messages from strangers inspired by the video. "You're an inspiration. Don't let that jerk win." She didn't reply, but the words warmed her, a quiet validation of the choice she'd made. At the center that afternoon, she met Henry again, sitting in the lobby. With a paper cup of coffee and a crossword puzzle he wasn't really solving. He looked up, his eyes clearer than they'd been at Maplewood. "You made it," he said, his voice soft but warm. Sarah sat beside him. "Yeah, I did, thanks to you." Henry shook his head. "You did this yourself. You saw me when I was just a shadow in that diner. You didn't have to, but you did." He paused, his fingers tracing the edge of his cup. "Back in '69, I lost friends who'd have done the same for me. You reminded me they're still out there in people like you." Sarah's throat tightened. "I just gave you a meal. It wasn't much." Henry's smile was small but real. It was everything kindness always is. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling, and Sarah felt something settle in her, a sense of belonging she hadn't known she was missing. Meanwhile, the Maplewood eatery was unraveling. The morning crowd was a ghost of its usual self, only 3 tables occupied by travelers passing through unaware of the boycott. Victor stood behind the counter, his usual polish gone, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes scanning the empty seats like they might fill by sheer will. The viral video had hit 200,000 views, now picked up by a national veterans group and featured on Oregon Daily's evening segment with a new headline, "Waitress's Kindness Sparks Community Uprising." The petition demanding Victor's apology or resignation had ballooned to 15,000 signatures, comments flooding in from across the country. "That diner doesn't deserve her. Hope she's somewhere better now." Victor tried damage control, posting a statement on the diner's social media. "We value all our customers and regret any misunderstanding." But the backlash was swift. "Your regret came too late. You lost the heart of your business." Regulars stayed away, Ellen. The teacher started a coffee meetup at a rival diner. Carl, the delivery driver, posted online, "I'm done with Maplewood until they do right by Sarah." Even the dishwasher, a quiet teen named Leo, left a note, "I quit." She was the only one who made this place feel like a team. Victor's silent business partner, a woman named Clara who'd funded the diner's opening, saw the video and called him her voice. Icy, "I'm pulling out, Victor. We're selling you." Turned a good place into a disgrace. The diner was listed for sale by week's end, the for sale sign a stark contrast to the faded Maplewood logo. At the Cascade Center, Sarah thrived, her first week spent learning names, helping a young veteran find a job program, sorting donations. From locals moved by her story, the center's staff treated her like family, passing around jokes, sharing lunches, tapping her shoulder with quiet "saw you" on the news smiles. One afternoon, a woman named Linda walked in, hesitant, her business attire out of place in the center's cozy lobby. She asked for Sarah, and when they met, she introduced herself. "I'm Clara Maplewood's former partner." "I didn't know what, Victor?" "Did until it was everywhere. I'm sorry it took me so long to act." Sarah nodded. "It's okay, it led me here." Clara handed her an envelope. No strings, just something to say you deserved better. Inside was a check for $3,000 and a note. "Your kindness changed more than one day. It changed us all." Sarah tucked it away, not for the money, but for what it meant, a recognition that her small act had rippled outward. That evening, as the center's lights dimmed, Sarah sat with Henry again, the lobby quiet, the sky outside turning orange. He looked at her, his voice steady. "You know why I called my old Navy buddy about you? Because you didn't just see me. You saw every soldier I ever lost. You gave them a moment, too." Sarah's eyes stung. "That's more than I thought I could do." Henry leaned back. "Real power isn't loud. It's in the quiet things, the choices no one sees until they do." Sarah smiled. "You sound like a poet." He chuckled, just old enough to know. "What matters?" As she locked up the center and walked to the bus stop, the envelope in her bag felt like a promise, not of wealth, but of purpose. The town was still talking, the video now at 500,000 views, strangers sending messages of support. A local artist painting a mural of a waitress and a veteran sharing a meal. Sarah didn't need the spotlight. She needed the work, the chance to keep showing up. The diner's fate was sealed, but hers was just beginning, a new chapter built on a single plate of eggs and a heart that refused to look away. Sarah locked the Cascade Community Center, her heart full, as stars dotted the Bend sky. The viral story faded, but her work grew, helping veterans find hope. The diner sold its new owner, vowing kindness. Clara's check funded her brother's tuition, easing Sarah's burden. Henry visited weekly, his stories now brighter. Sarah smiled at the mural of their shared meal, proof that one small act could reshape a town. Kindness, she learned, wasn't just a moment, it was a legacy, quietly built choice. By choice, forever changing those who chose to see.